peace and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Morning, members of the Senate. This meeting of the Senate of June 4, 2021 is called to order. And before we do anything else, the members of the Senate would have recalled that on the 7th day of May 2021, standing orders of the Senate were amended to allow senators to join and participate in the sitting of the Senate through the use of information and communications technology, and the members would have been aware of the restrictions placed on members who requested such facilitation by the Senate, and that they would be permitted to participate in the debate but not vote. And there are some other restrictions as well. Our members would have also recalled that the new provisions of the Standing Order 82B require such senators to seek permission of the President and the consent of the Senate who are present in the chamber to participate in the meeting remotely. We have received requests from 3 members of this Honorable Senate: Senator Obeah Hill. I'm sorry, 4 members, did I say 3? Senator Obeah Hill, Senator Don Webby, Senator Delroy Williams, and Senator Peter Bunting, who have requested permission to join virtually. I say without hesitation that I have agreed for all 4 persons to join virtually, but I indicate that perhaps a more stringent test will be applied in the future. We are using today as a way to test the facility. I know that Senator Hill, for example, who we are seeing there now, is in quarantine. Senators Bunting and Webby are outside the corporate area jurisdiction. And I believe that Senator Williams is also outside of the national jurisdiction. So I have given permission to them to join virtually, and I ask the Senate at this point in time if the Senate would approve their virtual participation. So the question is put to allow Senators Hill, Williams, Webby, and Bunting to join the session virtually. All in favor? Aye. Against? And I should indicate that in the next couple of days, certainly by the next meeting, a series of regulations, if you will be published to inform as to the specifics of the participation of the members. You'll notice that all of the members participating today are properly attired, as if they were in a sitting of the Senate. So we will proceed. Welcome Senators Hill, Williams, Webby, and Bunting. If you can hear me, you could just respond, please.
Hearing you loud and clear, Mr. President. Thank you very much for the welcome.
Thank you.
And the permission to join.
Yes, Senator Bunting.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm hearing you loud and clear.
Senator Hill.
Hearing you loud and clear, Mr. President, and thanks for the permission to join. My colleagues, thank you.
And Senator Williams. So thank you very much for participating in this groundbreaking session of the Senate. Statements by ministers. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the Senate today are the following: Ministry Paper number 30 of 2021, an annual report of the Public Accountancy Board for the year 2019-2020. Ministry Paper number 31 of 2021, an annual report of the Casino Gaming Commission for the year 2019-2020. Ministry Paper number 32 of 2021, and report of the University of the West Indies Chancellor's Commission of Governance of the University of the West Indies dated July 2020, and the final project report diagnostic of the University Operating Model dated March 2016. Annual report of the Jamaica Fire Brigade for the years 2013, 2014, 2014-2015, and 2015-2016. Annual report of the Rural Water Supply Limited for the year 2018-2019. Annual report of the National Solid Waste Management Authority for the year 2019-2020. Annual report of the Jamaica Promotion Corporation, JAMPRO, for the year 2018-2019. The Integrity Special Report of Investigation concerning allegations of irregularity in the use of the required material in the construction of drywall, partitions, and ceiling boards for the renovation and expansion of the Physiotherapy Department, University Hospital of the West Indies, and the Conch Export Levy Rate of Levy Order 2021 and resolution under the Conch Export Levy Act.
Unleash the spark of genius embedded in our people into innovation, entrepreneurship.
Okay. Members, please remember who are joining virtually, remember to mute your mics, please, when you're not speaking with us. Thank you. Bills brought from the Honorable House of Representatives.
The following is a message from the Speaker of the House of Representatives to the Honorable Senate. I have the honor to advise the Honorable Senate that on the 25th day of May 2021, a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Agro-Investment Corporation Act to entrust the functions of the Agricultural Marketing Corporation to the Agro-Investment Corporation, to repeal the Agricultural Marketing Corporation Act, and to provide for connected matters, was passed in the House of Representatives. I also have the honor to advise the Honorable Senate that on the first day of June 2021, the following bills were passed in the House of Representatives. A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Criminal Justice Suppression of Criminal Organizations Act to specify additional offenses in which criminal organizations are engaged in order to fund their activities, to increase the number of offenses under the Act, to expand the list of aggravating factors to be considered when sentencing an individual convicted of certain offenses under the Act, to improve the trial procedure in order to protect the identity of witnesses, and for connected matters, passed with 4 amendments, and 2, a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Trademarks Act, passed without amendment. Signed, Marissa Dalrympe Philibert, MP, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Petitions? I'm sorry.
Mr. President, I signify my willingness to take charge of the bill shortly entitled the Agro-Investment Corporation Amendment Act 2021.
A bill shortly entitled the Agro-Investment Corporation Amendment Act 2021 read the first time.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice of the second reading of the bill. Mr. President, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the second reading of the bill and to take it through all its concluding stages.
Mr. President, I also signify my willingness to take charge of the bill shortly entitled the Criminal Justice Suppression of Criminal Organizations Amendment Act 2021.
A bill shortly entitled the Criminal Justice Suppression of Criminal Organizations Amendment Act 2021 read the first time.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice of a second reading of the bill.
Mr. President, I signify my willingness to take charge of the Trademarks Amendment Bill 2021.
A bill shortly entitled the Trademarks Amendment Act 2021 read the first time.
Mr. President, I beg to give further notice of second reading of the bill.
Thank you. Petitions? Papers? Notices of motions given orally?
Mr. President? Mr. President, I beg to give notice that at the next sitting of the Senate, I will move the following motion. Whereas the Natural Resources Conservation Authority, NRCA, may request that an environmental impact assessment be done prior to granting a permit for any activity that may have a significant impact on the environment, such as mining. And whereas the NRCA is charged to regulate the environmental impact assessment process for environmental permits, and whereas there are no regulations in law governing the conduct of environmental impact assessments, and whereas environmental impact assessments are governed by the internal procedures developed by the National Environmental Planning and Planning Agency, and whereas there has been much public outcry about how environmental impact assessments are conducted, and whereas a review of the NRCA Act has not been done in excess of 10 years, and the Act is in need of urgent revision and modernization, be it resolved that the Senate urge the government to move to amend the NRCA Act in order to significantly improve its effectiveness, to undertake a national discussion on the role, function, and importance of the NRCA, NEPA, and the EIA process, to undertake a national public education campaign to inform, educate, and solicit the participation of the public on the above, to establish the process and procedures in law on how the environmental impact assessments are to be done. And be it further resolved that the government establishes a joint select committee of Parliament to review the NRCA Act to include specific provisions for undertaking environmental impact assessments and to make the existing law more effective in undertaking its mandate.
Thank you, Senator Fraser-Vins. Questions and answers to questions? Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to the sitting of the Senate. Motions for leave to introduce bills. The presentation of bills without the leave of the Senate first obtained. Public business. Minister?
Mr. President.
I'm sorry, just before we move. Senator Scott Monty, you have my permission to speak from a seat other than your own. Senator Morris?
Yes, Mr. President. It's a quick question that I want to ask, and I would like your permission to do so before Minister opens, because she would be able to respond. Mr. President, generally, we would have, after the Governor General's throne speech and the budget debate, we generally have a motion carried for the State of the Nation debate in the Senate, and I would like to find out how soon will that motion be taken in the Senate so that we can start that process.
Mr. President, I had intended to contact the leader of opposition business in the Senate on that matter. It's anticipated that within the next 2 weeks, or the motion will be passed with a view to taking it, to starting the debate thereafter, noting that there are several pieces of legislation which are about to be taken within this body as well. And as always, we prioritize the legislative agenda, but that will start shortly, and I will confirm the start date with the leader of opposition business.
Thank you very much. Senator Minister Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. President. The bill before the Senate, and before I commence that, may I just congratulate you and your team for the what I consider the moon landing, for the albeit the steps we have made, albeit forced upon us by the pandemic. That we have made some progress, and I sincerely hope within the coming months that we'll be able to conclude those discussions and to take us to a place where we're better able to manage our business. Mr. President, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the second reading of the bill entitled An Act to Amend the Agro-Investment Corporation Act, to entrust the functions of the Agricultural Marketing Corporation to the Agro-Investment Corporation, to repeal the Agricultural Marketing Corporation Act, and to provide for connecting matters, and to take it through all its concluding stages.
Sorry, members would have heard the question. Those in favor? Aye. Against? And as we are going along, members who are joining us have not been able to see the chamber, but a link is being sent to them now for them to see the chambers. They are hearing but not seeing.
Very well, Mr. President. The bill before the Honorable Senate, Mr. President, is the Agro-Investment Corporation Amendment Bill 2021. By way of background, the bill was debated in the House of Representatives and passed without amendment on May 25, 2021. On that date, the bill received the full support of the opposition spokesman on agriculture. By way of relevant background, Mr. President, the Cabinet, by its decision number 8 of 2018, dated March 6, 2018, among other things, granted approval for the repeal of the Agricultural Marketing Corporation Act, 1963, and the transfer of the title and assets of the Agricultural Marketing Corporation to the Agro-Investment Corporation. The Cabinet also approved the issue of drafting instructions to the Chief Parliamentary Council, as well as the amendment of the Agro-Investment Corporation Act in order to provide, one, for the management of a pool of funds, inter alia, and any provisions required to empower the Agro-Investment Corporation to perform the functions presently undertaken by the Agricultural Support Services and Productive Projects Fund, and to increase the complement of the board to a minimum of 6 and a maximum of 12 members instead of the existing complement of a minimum of 4 and a maximum of 8 by virtue of Section 3.1 of the Act, and to provide for the qualification of board members to include proficiency in matters relating to property management, procurement, accounting, and auditing, to augment those previously contained therein, that is to include agriculture, finance, or administration, stipulated in Section 3.2 of the Act. Notwithstanding the foregoing decision of the Cabinet, on April 1, 2020, when the initial draft bill was considered by the Legislation Committee of Parliament, the decision was made for certain changes to be made as follows: that the board complement of the Agro-Investment Corporation be not less than 7, no more than 13, that the categories of persons who may comprise the members of the Agro-Investment Corporation should not be closed, but instead be non-restricting, a provision that any regulations made be subject to affirmative resolution, and the corporation in exercising its functions be specifically made to be subject to the Public Bodies Management and Accountability Act and the Financial Administration and Audit Act. By way of a further decision, Cabinet Decision number 14 of 21, dated March 22, 2021, Cabinet granted approval for the bill to be introduced in the Houses of Parliament. Mr. President, the Agro-Investment Corporation, formerly the Agricultural Development Corporation, was established under the Agro-Investment Act in 2010, which was formerly the Agricultural Development Corporation of 1952. The Agro-Investment Corporation Act was enacted in 2010 to give effect to a name change to the Agricultural Development Corporation Act in order to provide for the Agro-Investment Corporation in law. The Agro-Investment Corporation is an agricultural investment facilitation, advisory, and management company which functions as the business facilitation department within the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, with a focus on agricultural investment promotion and facilitation, project development, and market development. The term Agro-Invest covers the investment chain from the identification of opportunities through feasibility studies, due diligence, and business planning, to fundraising, project management, long-term business performance monitoring, and technical support. Mr. President, the Agricultural Marketing Corporation was established under the Agricultural Marketing Corporation Act 1963 in order to establish and maintain an efficient system of marketing for agricultural produce by securing the most favorable arrangements for the purchase, handling, sale, and exportation of agricultural produce pursuant to Section 4 of the said Act. However, since 2009, the Agricultural Marketing Corporation has been without a board of directors or any management staff, during which time its operations have been undertaken by the Agro-Investment Corporation. Mr. President, the Agro-Investment Corporation plays an integral role in Jamaica's agricultural sector, and it has been on a drive to consolidate its efforts around the creation of a modern business model. Currently, the Agro-Investment Corporation is carrying the Agricultural Marketing Corporation as a charge on its budget. However, there is no evidence that such fiduciaries were established. It should be noted that the merging of the Agro-Investment Corporation with the Agricultural Marketing Corporation is consistent with the Public Sector Master Rationalization Plan, which is aimed at creating a more efficient and effective public sector by merging public bodies which share synergies of functions and resources. This position is further justified on the ground that the Agro-Investment Corporation has been conducting the functions of the Agricultural Marketing Corporation, which has been without a board since 2009. The proposed amendment to the Agro-Investment Corporation Act will seek to increase the efficiency of the board in light of the expansion of the functions of the corporation. This would result in better management of the corporation in accordance with the requirements of the Financial Administration and Audit Act and the Public Bodies Management and Accountability Act. The bill therefore seeks to, 1, to formalize the relationship between the Agro-Investment Corporation and the Agricultural Marketing Corporation by amending the Agro-Investment Corporation Act to entrust the functions of the Agricultural Marketing Corporation to the Agro-Investment Corporation and repeal the Agricultural Marketing Corporation Act. And 2, to strengthen the effectiveness of the Agro-Investment Corporation by increasing its membership and diversifying the qualification and skill sets of the members. And 3, to further increase the functions of the Agro-Investment Corporation, including empowering the entity to mobilize, manage the pool of funds to be used to enhance the competitiveness of Jamaica's agriculture in domestic and global markets. In the circumstances, Mr. President, I ask this Honourable Senate for its full support in passing the Agro-Investment Corporation Amendment Bill 2021. I will now take this Honourable Senate through a clause-by-clause analysis of the bill. The bill commences with the long title, An Act to Amend the Agro-Investment Corporation Act to entrust the functions of the Agricultural Marketing Corporation to the Agro-Investment Corporation, to repeal the Agricultural Marketing Corporation Act, and to provide for connecting matters. Clause 1. This clause provides a short title of the bill, and it indicates how the bill is to be construed when read, and that is for the bill to be read as one with the Principal Act. Clause 2. This clause proposes to amend Section 2 of the Principal Act by inserting definitions for agricultural produce and functions. Clause 3. This clause proposes to amend Section 3 of the Principal Act by deleting subsections 1 and 2 and replacing the foregoing sections with new provisions. The proposed new subclause 1 establishes the body called the Agro-Investment Corporation, consisting of the chairman and the deputy chairman, and such other members not being less than 7 nor more than 13. The proposed new subclause 2 stipulates that the members of the corporation, including the chairman and the deputy chairman, shall be appointed by the minister from amongst persons appearing to him to be qualified and who have experience in a profession, occupation, or discipline relating to agriculture, finance, administration, property management, procurement, accounting, auditing, or a profession, occupation, or discipline which the minister considers relevant to the advancement of the functions of the corporation. Clause 4. This clause proposes to amend Section 5 of the Principal Act, which deals with procedure and meetings of the corporation, at subsection 4 thereof, by deleting the word 4 and replacing it with 7, which would now indicate that the quorum of the corporation shall be 7, including the chairman and the deputy chairman. Clause 5. This clause proposes to repeal Section 7 of the Principal Act, which deals with the appointment of officers and servants, and substituting it with provisions dealing with the appointment and employment of officers and employees. It provides inter alia that no salary in excess of the prescribed rate shall be assigned to any officer or employees, and no appointment shall be made to an office to which a salary in excess of the prescribed rate is assigned, except with the prior approval of the minister responsible for the public service. It also provides that the prescribed rate shall be such rate as the minister responsible for the public service may prescribe by order subject to affirmative resolution. It further provides that the Governor-General may approve, subject to such conditions as may be imposed by him, the appointment of any officer in the public service of the government to any office with the corporation, and such officer so appointed or so employed in relation to other rights as a public officer shall be treated as continuing the service of the government. Clause 6. This clause proposes to amend the Principal Act by inserting a new Section 7A dealing with pensions, gratuities, and other retirement benefits. The clause provides, inter alia, that in relation to officers and employees of the corporation, with the approval of the Minister with responsibility for the public service, may enter into arrangements or make regulations regarding schemes under insurance policies or otherwise. The clause also requires the corporation to make provision for medical benefits, pensions, gratuities, and other retirement benefits or disability or death benefits. The arrangements entered into or regulations made by the corporation may also include a grant of the benefits to the dependents and the personal legal representatives of the officers and employees. Clause 7. This clause proposes to repeal Section 8 of the Principal Act, which deals with the functions of the corporation, and substituting it with new provision which also addresses the functions of the corporation. The proposed new Section 8 mandates the functions of the corporation, which include, among other things, as follows: to stimulate, facilitate, and undertake the development of agriculture in Jamaica, to mobilize and manage a pool of funds to be used to enhance the competitiveness of Jamaican agriculture in the domestic and global markets, to finance select agricultural support services, including agricultural extension, research, marketing, and strategic information to producers and exporters of agricultural produce, to provide grants for projects in the non-traditional agricultural sector, and finally, to establish and maintain an efficient system of processing and marketing for agricultural produce by securing the most favorable arrangements for the purchase, handling, and exportation of agricultural produce. The corporation is also charged with the functions to provide and maintain adequate marketing outlets for agricultural produce, to buy and sell agricultural produce, and to provide for the collection, transportation, storage, grading, packing, and the processing of agricultural produce. The corporation, subject to the Public Bodies Management and Accountability Act and the Financial Administration and Audit Act, may also receive contributions or donations of money or other property of any kind from national or international sources, and is required to deal with such money or property pursuant to any trust, terms, or conditions imposed by the donor. The corporation may lend or advance money upon which such security that is considered proper or without taking security. In general, the corporation can do all such things it considers necessary or expedient for the purpose of carrying out its functions. And any property of the government vested in the Commission of Lands or the Accountant General and copied, utilized, or enjoyed by the Agricultural Marketing Corporation before the commencement of this current Act, and all interest, rights, and easements relating to the said property shall, without conveyance, assignment, or transfer, belong to and be vested in a corporation, that is, the Agro-Investment Corporation, and the foregoing is subject to, inter alia, all or any trust, and to all debts, liabilities, and obligations affecting the said property. The bill concludes with a memorandum of objects and reasons. And I invite members of the Senate to make their contribution to the debate. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Minister Campbell.
Mr. President.
I recognize you, Senator Golden. Sorry. I recognize you, Senator Bunting.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'm honored to have the privilege of being the first senator to participate in a debate virtually. And in addition to that, I, as you know, Mr. President, have deep roots in the agricultural sector. My family has 3 generations of farmers, starting with my father, then my brother, and now my nephews. In addition, my father was, in the 70s, the chairman of the Agricultural Development Corporation, which, as Minister Campbell pointed out, was the predecessor institution of the Agro Investment Corporation. And so I well recall in the 70s when the then Michael Manley administration had put a great deal of reliance or a great emphasis on self-reliance and on eating what you grow and growing what you eat. I believe that was the first time that that slogan was used, although it has been used subsequently. And so he put a great emphasis on the Agricultural Development Corporation and the Partner Agricultural Marketing Corporation. My own father was, in a sense, a pioneer in the dairy industry. He imported and installed the first rotary herringbone milking parlor in the Americas. It was very high-tech at the time. It had automated feeders, automated entry and exit of the milking cows, automatic cluster removal, etc. In fact, I recall as a child when Raul Castro, then Minister of Agriculture of Cuba, visited Jamaica, he was taken to my father's farm to show where we had reached in agriculture, in particular in the dairy sector. So it was natural for the Michael Manley administration to tap his expertise in that area. And I remember him putting in a phenomenal amount of time as a volunteer in the service of the Agricultural Development Corporation and the wider sector. Regrettably, as we know, as we all know, particularly someone like Senator Webby would recall, that when a number of our multilateral borrowing agreements required us to either eliminate or drastically remove tariffs on imported agricultural products, and a lot of dumped milk powder ended up in the market and virtually destroyed the dairy industry. Interestingly, at the time, the Anti-Dumping Commission did a study which showed that at the farm gate, Jamaican dairy farmers were as productive as European dairy farmers or even New Zealand dairy farmers. But because of the heavy export subsidies which they enjoyed and other subsidies, they could then land it in Jamaica in powder form, cheaper, on a liter equivalent or quart equivalent basis than the local farmers could sell. And even though there was an award of a countervailing tariff by the Anti-Dumping Commission, it was never imposed by the government. And we saw generations of genetic breeding, the work of Dr. T.P. Leckie, and many other farmers like my father who had decades of breeding the Jamaica Hope dairy cattle, and which was perfectly adapted to our environment. And we saw most of that ended up in patties. So most of that breeding stock ended up in patties because there was just no viability in the dairy industry at that time. Today, I think the dynamics have changed, And once again, there is potential, but it's going to take decades to build back the breeding herds and the milking herds for us to compete there. So the lesson that we must learn is that agriculture is unlike many other industries. You can't turn off the tap and turn back on the tap. For many sectors of agriculture, it requires tremendous lead time, years to build the capacity and increase production. So that is why, Mr. President, the opposition welcomes this bill, which is modernizing the institutional infrastructure to support agriculture and to support farmers at the end of the day. Because although it's a public sector institution, we rely on private sector farmers to do the actual production. Now, in my father's time, farming was a vocation. If you ask my father, you know, what he did, he would say he was a dairy farmer. He identified as a dairy farmer. Subsequent generations, my brother and my nephews, they think of themselves more as agribusinessmen. They're much more business oriented. They maintain proper management information systems. They want to ensure that they have returns on their investment of both time, energy, land, financial resources that will compete with their family member who is in the financial sector. And therefore, they have taken a much more sophisticated approach to agricultural production. They've moved on from dairy, and my brother is now one of the leading fish farmers in Jamaica. And I'm impressed by the level of statistics that he can give you, spanning literally decades on his, production information for each pond. The feed conversion ratios, the growth rates, etc. What we need now is a public infrastructure, public institutional infrastructure that transitions to this 21st century farming sector, transitions to suit the needs of the 21st century farmer, who relies tremendously on technology, on management information systems. And from the public sector point of view, accurate, timely statistics are critical. And we do have some concerns, or the sector does have some concerns around the reliability of much of the data collected. I believe it's by RADA, the extension officers there, that a lot of this information is perhaps double counted. And I'm not saying this to cast any aspersions on anybody or whether at the policy level or the administration level. But because of the way, the perhaps dated and infrequent way we go around collecting this information, if, for example, a farmer had a herd of sheep in Clarendon, sold it to a farmer in St. Elizabeth, and then who a couple years later sold it on to a farmer in Westmoreland, quite likely this herd of sheep would get counted in all three parishes. Because if you follow how these statistics are collected, they only seem to be added. You never seem to see them subtracted. I know oftentimes production which takes place on the borders of parishes are often claimed by each parish, because of course the RADA extension officers want to show that their parish is producing well. So I think we have to relook at how we do this collection of data. I believe this will fall under the new mandate of the Agro-Investment Corporation. I don't know how they're going to deconflict their extension services with those provided by RADA. And perhaps the minister in his closing can help us with that. But, Mr. President, the pandemic presents us an opportunity to once again look at this whole issue of food security. The logistical challenges that we've had importing even basic food items and inputs for our manufacturers. And this is not something unique to Jamaica, worldwide. The cost of shipping containers from China, for example, went from less than $3,000 per 40-foot container to, I think at one time it was over $10,000 per 40-foot container. The impact that has on the prices of agricultural commodities, which generally are fairly high volume and low value, so that the low value in terms of by weight or by volume, then what we have is that the shipping cost to import them becomes a more and more material input cost, and we are vulnerable as we're absolute price takers in that regard. So I think we have an opportunity, and hopefully with a newly revived and modernized Agro-Investment Corporation, we can look once again at building our production capacity. I can tell you, again, just citing from my family's involvement in tilapia production, during the course of the pandemic, their sales and, well, their production and sales have increased by approximately 50%. That is a phenomenal opportunity. Very few businesses, particularly agricultural producers, have been able to ramp up production in response to changing consumer purchasing habits so quickly. And I think it bodes well, not just for the inland fisheries, but for agriculture more widely. The final point I'd like to make, Mr. President, and really more so a question or clarification for the minister, is all the concerns about managing a pool of funds and the Agro-Investment Corporation actually lending money directly to farmers. I would like to hear a little more about the structure of this, because it seems to be at risk of duplicating the work of the institutions who are already set up to lend to farmers. You have from PC banks to the Development Bank of Jamaica, which wholesales funds through intermediaries, various intermediaries to farmers. And we have had a poor history of government lending directly, whether to farmers or manufacturers. Direct development lending has not gone well. And I would be interested to hear what is contemplated in some more detail for the Agro-Investment Corporation in terms of what is the size of this pool of funds they contemplate managing, and what is the mechanism and infrastructure that will be put in place to facilitate this lending directly to farmers. So, Mr. President, with those remarks, I would reiterate that the opposition welcomes this bill. In some respects, it is tidying up a situation that has existed for over a decade, and just formalizing that in terms of the formal closing off of the Agricultural Marketing Corporation. But I think if properly executed, it has the potential to bring a renewed focus to the agricultural sector and also to modernize the whole approach to agriculture and the institutional arrangements that support our farmers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Bunting. Senator Campbell Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I too must commend us for allowing our colleagues, well, for doing what was necessary for our colleagues to be able to participate virtually. And as someone who sits on that committee, the Standing Orders Committee, which worked on that, I am quite proud of the fact that we have been able to do this. But, Mr. President, I rise in support of the bill before us. At heart, I'm a farmer. I'm a traditional farmer at heart. I want to raise goats and sheep. Yes, like my colleague across the floor there. I want to grow herbs. I want to grow herbs and vegetables. In the interim, yes, herbs. In the interim, I'm a backyard gardener with my lettuce and my kale and my peppers. A few years ago, subsistence farming, yes. A few years ago, it's actually therapy for me. It's, especially in this time of COVID, my happiest time in the mornings is to wake up quite early and go outside and my hand is in the soil. It makes me happy. It brings me peace. And I miss fresh eggs. A few years ago, my family decided we were going to raise chickens in the backyard. And
I'm sorry, Damien.
we raised chickens and we were told you needed odd numbers because I thought 2 chickens would be enough to start to see what we were doing because we weren't looking to raise them as a business. It was more to have fresh eggs. And we got 3 because we were told you need to raise chickens in odd numbers. I don't know who can shed light on that, but that's the thinking. And we named the 3 chickens Margaret Thatcher, Casey Fennell, and Landasha. Another time I will share why those names. But each child got an opportunity. No. Each child got the opportunity to raise the chickens, and one child named Margaret Thatcher, and the other one Casey Fennell, and I went with Landasha because I saw the name written, and it was LAN-A. That's how the parents spelled the name, and I was fascinated, so I chose to name one chicken Landasha. I must say that's the chicken that didn't lay eggs. But anyway. But this bill is not about me and my love for agriculture. Instead, it is about further moving the industry, the sector, into the 21st century. It is about using what we know today to make this very important sector more efficient and effective. When I was reading the bill, the words formalize and streamlining came to mind. I also recognized that it was going to be all hands on deck, not just those in the field of agriculture, but those who interface with the practitioners. It is going to take a mindset shift, even amongst our civil servants. It is going to have to be a different way of doing things We can do it, but it's going to take a lot for us to do it. Now, there are some specific sections in the bill. Section 7, which amends the principal bill, and we now have some new functions. And so, in the bill before us, Section 7 and then 8B, to mobilize and manage a pool of funds to be used to enhance the competitiveness of the Jamaican agriculture in the domestic and global markets. This is going to be ultra important. And this is an issue not just faced by Jamaica and Jamaica's farmers. Competitiveness is a very big issue globally when it comes on to agriculture. We move down to D, to provide grants for projects in the non-traditional agricultural sector. And this is important because this is where we're also going to attract new players into the market. And when you introduce new players into the market, yes, there are risks, but there are also advantages where new thought processes will come into play, new ways of doing things will come into play. And so it is very important that we ensure that the non-traditional sectors within agriculture are taken into account. Now, we move on to G, to establish and maintain an efficient system of processing and marketing for agricultural produce. And when I read it, Ghana came to mind. Now, I think it was last year, the president of Ghana in his state visit to Switzerland made the announcement that they would not be just sending their primary commodities abroad anymore. Because the country Ghana, West Africa on a whole, does not earn even a quarter of what the chocolate industry globally earns, and it's West Africa that sends the raw material. But it's a tricky situation. And when I read G, I said to myself, are we thinking about this aspect of it? Are we thinking about, because you have to make a choice between generating revenue from primary commodity, the exportation, or adding value to products locally, which when you add value to products locally, it takes time to build up, you don't immediately earn foreign exchange. So these are some of the considerations which have to be forefront in the minds, and which is why I was happy when I saw that in Section 3 it was raised that the composition of the corporation would not just be agriculturalists, it wouldn't only be farmers, but you need the finance people, you need the administration people, you need professionals who are thinking outside of just the industry, the love of the dirt and the animals. Outside of that, you will need to bring minds together to ensure that we're doing what is best and we're garnering enough from whatever we choose to do within this new corporation. And it says, without prejudice to the generality of paragraph 1G, the corporation shall provide and maintain adequate marketing outlets for agricultural produce. This will be important because, for example, when we export our agricultural products, we shouldn't only market to those in the diaspora. Not just the Jamaicans who are living in the big three. We need to expand the marketing to those who just love Jamaica and everything Jamaican and may want to try some of our foods. Mr. President, the potential farmer in me, because it's a potential farmer, is excited not only for those who will join this sector because of its modernization, but for the many Jamaicans who have stuck with toiling the soil while it remained behind on many fronts. A new day is dawning for agriculture, and oh, what a time it is to know that agriculture will recover stronger and more resilient.
Thank you, Senator Campbell Rodriguez. I recognize you from a different seat other than your own.
Thank you, sir.
Senator Crawford.
As a farmer, I wasn't going to speak today, but then I saw that the leader of government business was missing my voice. So by extension, I decided to oblige. Yes, by your interest, indeed, yes. Mr. President, I decided to speak today because I have found it to be a misleading but reinforced statement that Jamaica cannot compete in agriculture. Indeed, we may not be able to compete very well on price in agriculture, but no, not from the member, generally, yes. I don't want it to be misunderstood that it is by the member. It is a generally reinforced statement, especially when it comes to importation, that Jamaica cannot compete. There is a competition based on price that economies of scale have often caused for our inability to compete on price. There are farms in some places like Brazil bigger than some parishes that we have. And because of the mechanization and automation that is coming within agriculture, even more so, it is causing for scale to be an important consideration in cost containment and by extension, price offering. It has led, therefore, for countries like ourselves to have to focus on quality. And Jamaica can more than compete on quality. However, misinformation has caused for the quality component to not be sufficiently ingrained in the public, even locally, and also overseas. Misinformation, for example, within a sector that the senator states that she is planning to go into and is needed in that sector. We welcome you into that sector of goat raising. Yes. And it is because we actually import almost 80% of what we consume as curry mutton, over $2 billion or 110,000 carcasses of animals are imported. And the price of foreign mutton is actually very much less than the price of local mutton. Except that foreign mutton is a totally different animal than goat. Foreign mutton is actually properly termed mutton, because that is sheep. And goat is chevron. So actually goat meat have less fat. Goat meat have more taste because of a higher bone to meat ratio. And goat meat is often younger than foreign mutton, which is the rejected mother of the lamb market. So how would I be able to compete with your garbage if I am selling my priority product? So what happens is within the lamb industry, you have a set of mothers for a particular period of time, because you know in the Western and the bigger countries they eat lamb. The lamb is a baby sheep. That lamb is produced by a mother sheep. That mother sheep, after a while, is no longer an efficient producer of baby sheep. And so that lamb, that mother sheep, is then sold as mutton. Yes. Now, it's not dissimilar if I was able to sell spent hen, eggs, birds that were bought to lay eggs. Having passed its usefulness, if I sold that as meat, there is no way that meat, people will sell chicken grown for meat, could sell it at the price that I sell it for. But the lack of knowledge has caused for a man to go to the meat shop and ask why it is that local goats are there compared to foreign mutton. And an entity like this must take upon itself the duty to inform. If you want to eat all sheep, go on ahead and eat all sheep. But don't ask me to sell you as 8-month-old goat that was grown only for meat for the same price as a 9-year-old sheep that was used for lamb. And he made all the returns from this lamb market. And it's the same thing why some of us don't know the additional value of our coffee. Many of us don't know the additional value of our fruits. And so therefore we keep comparing, how come? And a lot of us know, goat in particular, foreign mutton tastes different. It tastes different because it's a different animal. It's a totally different animal. And you have to pressure it and things like that. When you buy our nice little local rammy, you have to pressure that nice and sweet. The other reality I want us to consider is the cooperation, Minister of Foreign Affairs, that could be gained for food security within CARICOM, based on the protections that quoted provides. I don't know if you're smiling at me right now, but I'm giving you some nice advice. Yeah, with me. Or possibly. But what is happening? I think an organization like this, and again, Mr. President, I have to big up JAMPRO. JAMPRO is an excellent organization that seeks to go and find opportunities many times within the Caribbean and other places for Jamaicans. I myself, as a businessman, have been on tours of JAMPRO into Trinidad and into Barbados, where they use their greater analysis and greater expertise to find some of these markets for us. And it is a necessary thing for a small business, because a small business is stuck with trying to find one person with every expertise. A small business don't normally have a marketing department and an accounting department and an administrator. You have one person, and she's the marketer, the admin, the accounts. And therefore, if she's good at accounts, it is unlikely she's great at marketing.
And it has to be a she.
And more than likely. Well, Senator Brian will tell you the University of the West Indies now is at 17% male. And that is another time that we have to intervene in that reality. And Senator Samuda will tell you that the prison is almost also 80% male. So the university is 17% male and the prison is 80% male. We have to intervene. But what I'm saying is that organizations like JAMPRO and hopefully Agro-Invest are providing the expertise, because the average farmer in Jamaica is a small business. You have some, like Senator Bunting's brother, who might be medium, because when you go a real foreign, it's not that large. When I go visit a farm in New York, an egg farm, the guy says to me, he has a small farm, he had 2 million birds. The largest farm in Jamaica has 78,000 birds. This man had 2 million and he was small. So because we don't have that expertise, if Agro-Invest, which is taking on the marketing component, could go into CARICOM, find out what are the things that they are in need of, then come and amalgamate within our space. Because we are small, so therefore it is 10 away that is going to full a container. These are experiences that I am giving you, that I have experienced myself. That there's an interest in Trinidad, but you alone cannot full a container. And you're calling around trying to find who else would use a refrigerated container, and by the time the opportunity gone, them importing from the United States. If Agro-Invest could take on that jumper role for agriculture, to go out into the spaces and find those opportunities, especially within CARICOM, because the price component is less of a deterrent, because there's a protection if Jamaica can prove itself able to provide X% of CARICOM's demand. We're looking at it for egg powder now. It's used in the baking sector. We're looking at it for honey now. Jamaican honey. I mean, if you go into bees now, you can't get enough honey. You cannot, as it comes itself. I'm telling you that. I'm telling you that. Right? When you look into mutton, as I said, where we import alone into Chevron, because I keep saying mutton, into goat. But the Caribbean also consumes that. And sometimes, not just in the raw fashion, but in a processed, value-added fashion that now calls for us to make more returns. Like mutton patty, goat patty, like goat patty, and goat burger. You understand? But there's also now flavored honey. People have all kind of spices that they add into it. The teas are taking off and making big impact into the market. If the carry come, you know how much peas we import under protection from Belize? So, sorry? Right, but if I'm wrong, you have to tell me, you know, because I like to be corrected. But under protection, yes. But if we could export back to Belize some of our things, we import some things from Trinidad. If we could export back to Trinidad, but if this organization could seek those opportunities, seek those areas that they're trying to find vendors for, and then create an amalgamation, a center for all the small people to come into those markets, it would be great. The other thing is, coming from that same concept, is the tourism sector. There seems to be an emotion that the tourism sector don't want local products. As a person who has been in that sector, I tell you, it is not true. They don't mind local products. They want either a product to be affordable or more affordable than normal, but more so, the amount, the quantity. This is what we're faced with, the consistent quantity. This is what we face with, Senator Samuda. We have large hotels and small farms. 1,000-room hotels who said that he wants 10,000 pounds of potato actually want 10,000 1-pound potato because every plate must look the same. Can you imagine me and Senator Braham go to a hotel, him have one big potato and me have 2 little potato. I am grabbing away his plate. That's what's home. At home he gets a big plate and I get a small plate. But when we pay the same price, when my mom cook food, he get bigger than me. But when I pay the same price at the hotel, I want to see the consistency in my plate. And worse, if him get a big lobster and I get a little lobster. Just imagine. So therefore, what happens now, Senator Longmore, is that if the hotel needs a 10,000 1-pound potato, that farmer likely have to go have 100,000 pounds to pick out 10,000 1-pound potato. Because all potato don't just grow 1 pound. And so what you have now is that many of our farmers might say, may have 10,000 pounds, but you don't have 10,000 1 pound. If we had an amalgamation system that was coordinated and organized, like AMC. I can tell you about a big wholesale in Jamaica that none of us as goat farmers can supply the goat that they want. None of us. Them want so much goat that all we do is cut our yaya for them. Because everybody call them, you know. As you buy a goat, you call them. And when they say, I want X pound, they say, all right, I'll get back to you. And so, what happened now? No, it's 110,000 carcass. You're all welcome. No. Yes, and $1,000 per pound. So what I'm saying is that for the hotel industry, what we suffer as farmers is that there are some private persons who then become intermediaries and then now impose upon us the power of intermediary and take all the profits. And so we end up prefer not sell than to sell the intermediary because of the profit portion that they claim. Government could intervene and do that on our behalf. The final thing, Mr. President, is as it relates to I don't want to speak to the feed. Well, I'll speak to that first. We often hear, Senator, that there is a glut of certain vegetables in our market. And that's because a 6-week thing, every man seeking an opportunity. When there's a high price, every man jump in, and in 6 weeks, there's now a glut. So we're moving between ebbs and flows, between scarcity and glut, and it is going to become worse as people lose formal job opportunities and start jumping into anything where them can. Me a piece of land, let it high, me jump in. It is a very unfortunate thing that we have seen in the egg industry. You see, in the egg industry in September, Mr. President, $7,000, $8,000 case. You see, when it reached November now, when Christmas baking start, $10,000, $11,000 a case. Every man now say, hey, what money they pay egg, him jump in, him buy 1,000 fowl. 1,000 fowl is $1 million. Him go down all kind of place and borrow money. You see, by the time him get the fowl them January, February, Christmas done. It gone back to 7,000 can't pay for him fowl. Him a run come now and I beg you to take some fowl. And next year again, another set will happen. Well, they're asking for established farmers now to buy the fowl off of them. But it is because them not have this information. When to start, how to catch the season. But a bird will lay for a year, so how you want to sell it for 2 months? These are things that people, but we hear often of this excess feed, excess vegetables. This excess vegetable can be used for animal feed. But we leave them to go into price wars to sell this excess vegetable. So when you go downtown one day, tomato is $300, the next day is $60. If you had a system that took excess vegetables, you will stabilize the price and you will provide a cheap feed for those who are doing animals. But there is no coordinator. Well, I see Senator Braham is looking so proud right now. He didn't know that I was a farmer of great repute. If they could do that, it would become a great benefit to us as well. The last thing I'd like for government to look at, and Senator, I'm sitting in his seat, Senator Bunting spoke to it, and he spoke to the loans. There's a concept that we call the long-run cost curve. In the long run, your knowledge and experience reduce costs automatically. I'll make a simple example. The first time your mom taught you how to make dumpling, most of the flour waste. By the time you need it, it's too soft. You throw in some more flour, it's too tough. You throw in some more water, it's too soft. Then your face and your shoes and everything have the rest of the flour. I was learning. But when my mother make dumpling, she don't even have to wash the pot, you know. She need out the entire flour out of it. Yes, it's a thing. And many of the senators now having gotten experience. When my mother cooking Sunday dinner, she go to bed, you know. Me have to stand up over it and keep joking it, you know. Imagine if the both of us were chefs. I would be a very expensive hire, and she would be at a low cost hire. So therefore, I would never get the job. Right. Some of the time when you hear our young people quarreling, it is for that reason why experience is asked for within companies. It's the long run cost curve. Over time, your costs reduce. The government have to consider that for people who are breaking frontier and going into things. You know how much goat me lose because of lack of knowledge? But gain knowledge from losing. But hopefully, me not out of business by the time me learn. Within the short run, there needs to be available resources so that the short run cost is not as high because there's a natural learning that you must go through. Both you and your staff don't understand it sufficiently. So when I take on a goat man who say he can raise goat, him used to raise 115 or 120 goat. I throw 400 goat game. When 400 goats start to have baby, you know, you don't know what to do.
Yes.
Every day you got 3 dead, mother lay down upon him. This happened, and it hurt your head and there's nowhere to turn for that assistance into the frontier breaking. So that we can then say, okay, I know how to do this and I know how to do that. If Agro-Invest could serve that frontier, that a man say, okay, these are the industries that we are giving some frontier assistance towards, it could be of great benefit. So, like you, Senator Zamuda, who I am well pleased, Senator Green, a friend of mine, in whom I am also well pleased. And I hope that some of these things can be considered from the experience that I've gained to a drink. Yeah, a conference. Yes. And I'm very open to that. But these are some of the things that we have learned, that we believe that if this entity could do some of that, it will open a barrage of opportunities for Jamaicans to sit and fill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Crawford. Senator Gill.
Thank you, Mr. President. President, I rise today to participate in this debate in which the government has established a proposed bill to merge the Agro-Investment Corporation with the Agricultural Marketing Corporation. And it says, sir, that it's in keeping with the public sector master rationalization plan. President, the expansion of output and growth in the economy is necessary for Jamaica. Growth creates jobs, it provides opportunities, it increases revenues for the government, and it allows for a better standard of living for all Jamaicans. We know that economic growth, however, depends on the ability of small and medium-type businesses to thrive and to be competitive. And it is the same thing with small farmers. They must be able to provide the best quality goods and service at the lowest possible cost. Government, and in particular the public sector, is a significant part of the cost structure of businesses. President, if we're going to make our businesses competitive, the government too must be competitive and efficient. The public, and I want to promote that all public sector agencies, ministries, must go through a state of transformation to improve efficiency and productivity in serving the state. The process of transformation in the public sector, sir, it started in 2009 in major. And the cabinet agreed to a strategy of restructuring the public sector aimed at radically restructuring established organizations and systems of government with a goal of making government leaner, more efficient, flexible, responsible, and accountable. And this is what is being promoted today with this merger of these two entities. And in doing so, it created what would have been the then master rationalization plan. President, a transformed public sector is supposed to be dynamic, innovative, and responsive to the needs of the citizens and businesses. And I want to say that because
it is important, if we are going to thrive as a country, the state support must be at the highest level of efficiency and productivity. If we are going to be supporting the needs of the citizens, supporting the needs of the private sector, the public sector must be efficient and productive. Mr. President, when I look at the proposed bill, so this calls for a merger of two entities. And a merger, sir, calls for the transitions of systems, processes, and cultures. But it also calls for the transitioning of the employees. And as a trade unionist, my concern is always going to be that the security of tenure and employment is critical. It is always going to be that they must have the confidence in the transition so that they are at a better place, so that their terms and conditions of employment is either sustained or improved. And so we're bringing together two major entities that is going to infuse systems to be efficient, processes to be efficient, and a culture that ought to be effective. And so this is one of the things that I hope for in the outcome of this merger and transition. President, one of the most critical clauses in the legislation, the proposed legislation, is Clause 7, the functions of the corporation. To stimulate, facilitate, and undertake the development of agriculture in Jamaica. This has always been a major call. It's not today we're hearing about it. It's not just yesterday we're hearing about it. For decades we have been calling for the stimulation of agriculture in Jamaica. And globally, that is always a call, a continuous transformation. Mr. President, it says to finance and select agricultural support services, including agricultural extension, research. Mr. President, research for agriculture is fundamentally critical. Research is critical to ensure that you remain competitive. You remain a part of the market. Research is critical, Mr. President, to ensure that you also create variety. And that you ensure the sustainability of your products. Mr. President, it says also to organize and train farmers and technical personnel. Now, we have to do the assessment and determination of the training needs of the farmers. We have to train for them to be more effective and efficient. Senator Crawford spoke about this, providing those produce to the tourism sector. And so part of that training must deal with the question of quality. Quality, not just quantity alone. The quality in terms of what you produce, the consistency of that quality. And President, the training must also treat with the aspect of diversity. We have to change. We have to change. The training also, one of the critical challenges that we face in an agricultural sector today is the impact of climate change. And so how do we train our farmers around dealing with those mitigating circumstances around climate change. The other aspect of training, Mr. President, must also be, we're not only training farmers to produce, but training farmers to do business and to operate a business. So it is very critical. Mr. President, Jamaica has a great capacity for food production, and there are many exciting opportunities on the global market for the sector. The country's prospects for developing agriculture and agribusiness lie in producing food in which it has a distinct and competitive advantage. President, pursuing product diversification through value-added food products is important. And there are many, many opportunities in agriculture. In fact, we have to feed our population of approximately 2.8 million. We also have to be feeding those 3.8 million tourists that come to our shores. And we anticipate that they are going to be, notwithstanding the circumstances, the tourists are going to come here and to increase. Mr. President, there are many export opportunities for Jamaican agricultural products. Jamaican agricultural produce and its related agro-processed products, and Senator Obeah can attest to this, continue to enjoy a reputation worldwide for their unique flavor and profiles. That is why a Grace Kennedy can be in Africa. And Senator Obeah, I know you're not speaking here today, but I will say that on your behalf, sir. So products such as coffee, cocoa, and ginger readily come to mind and represent a few of the available opportunities. Mr. President, we have started an extensive export on mangoes, and it is getting raving reviews from the diaspora. The agricultural products can be exported or sold on several local consolidators, agro-processors, the hotels, the supermarkets, the exporters, and other commercial interests. President, the government's commitment is demonstrated through the implementation of the agro-parks and the ongoing technical support provided through the Ministry of Agriculture and its related agencies. I want to commend the Ministry of Agriculture for the work it's been doing for the sector. President, you know, the future of our agriculture sector is very important. And if we're going to reap success and be sustainable, then we must put a strategy, an effective strategy, to invest and encourage our young people to participate in agriculture. Good thing we have a young minister that promotes the type of energy. President, I will say this, you know, when I was in school, I wanted to go in doing agriculture. I wanted to become a vet. And I remember I expressed that intention and desire to my agricultural science teacher. And one Monday morning, he came to my classroom and asked the teacher permission for me to accompany him somewhere. It was an agricultural science class. So I got up and I was excited. Agricultural science teacher asked you to follow him somewhere. So I was going with him and I was asking him, so where are we going, sir? And he said, you will soon know. Now the school, sir, had a male, a ram or a buck, very large. And it's so apparent that over the weekend he was bitten. His name was Lloyd. He was bitten by dogs. And my responsibility that Monday morning was to dress Lloyd. And And when I went, I was feed Lloyd and everything, and Lloyd was very big. But when I saw Lloyd, and it appears that the injuries may have taken place from about Friday, based on the state that they were in. And the state that they were in, it was covered with maggots. My responsibility was to dress Lloyd and clean up all of that. Well, President, that day was the shortest lived desire for me to become a vet. And I couldn't deal with lunch, and I couldn't explain to my grandmother why I had no interest in dinner. But we must never, as young persons, be deterred from a desire to pursue a career, especially in agriculture. Globally, several challenges contribute to a shift in the ambitions for the rural youth from agriculture to non-agricultural careers. And President, some of them are real, including tangible constraints to the access to resources, such as land, finance, training. President, some of the most pervasive challenges hinder our youth involvement in agriculture. And they involve, the family and the community pressure. No, man, you can't be a farmer. You must go be a doctor, be a lawyer, be an engineer. President, the perception is that agriculture must be seen as some sort of a backup plan. We must change that philosophy. We must change that philosophy. We must change the philosophy and mindset that it must be seen as an alternative plan. It is a core plan that the country and the people depend on. There's also a challenge for young people about the perceived lack of profitability. They believe they're not going to get no money out of it, or no quick returns. And the labor you put in today, you're not going to get the returns until months down the road. We have to change that perception. The question of access to land is critical. So they want land to produce, but it is inadequate. Land is used for other purposes. And we tend to be moving away from utilizing our land for other commercial purposes rather than agriculture. And there has to be a balance. Critical also, President, is access to finance. So young people are on a collateral. They have no support, they have no backative, but they need a start. And so part of this new trust with this merger must ensure that there are critical provisions put in place to give young people a start in terms of finance and financial support. This is what drives the confidence in ensuring that young people are going to participate in agriculture and make agriculture a career. Mr. President, the access to training, education, and information. So Senator Crawford talked about mixing the flour until the flour all over him. And so for the start, our young people need to understand, need to learn, need to be able to have the confidence of going into it and to be successful. And success is not going to come overnight. But the commitment of it. I saw Senator Obeah Hill, when his picture came up, he had a picture in the background of a old cane farmer, with a machete. We have to depict farming that it not is not confined to old people and to old farmers. We have to start portraying agriculture that young people are involved in agriculture. And Senator Hill, I have nothing against your painting. I believe it's a very expensive painting.
Of course, it's Senator Hill.
It's Senator Hill. And so we have to change the perception. We have to change the perception. We must continue as a country to stimulate sustainable growth in agriculture. And so we know that COVID, the pandemic, has caused a rippling adverse effect on the industry. There was immediate and ongoing impact that created a reduction of markets and demands and an impact on produce and livestock. The Ministry of Agriculture must continue to pursue policies and targeted initiatives geared towards a new economic landscape. We have to build back agriculture by improving agriculture production, increase productivity and efficiency in the sector, and improve food security. We have to do this, President, mindful that the effects of the pandemic alongside the impact of climate change, bearing in mind that we are entering into a hurricane season. So we have these consistent challenges that we have to deal with, but we have to prepare ourselves around it. I want to commend the ministry who immediately responded with recovery initiatives, like removing the excess of goods produced due to the closing down of the markets. President, when the National Irrigation Commission and RADA commenced distribution of water and tanks to farmers impacted by the double whammy of the drought and the pandemic, that was commendable. Other initiatives included the production incentive program to facilitate the recovery of the industry, the Agricultural Competitiveness Program, Bridging Project, and the Essex Valley Agricultural Development Project. President, RADA continue its drive to promote the development of agriculture and enhance efficiency in the industry by offering farmers support in area of extension service, irrigation, and marketing aimed at improving efficiency in the industry. President, there's work to be done. This merger today is aimed, as it indicates, to formalize a relationship between the two entities, to strengthen the effectiveness of Agro-Investment Corporation by increasing its membership and diversifying the qualifications and skill sets of its members. As a trade unionist, I know what it means to have increased membership. And so we want to ensure that there are targeted objectives to increase those who are members, to increase the number of farmers, to increase the number of businesses that produce in agriculture. And so we're laying the foundation for the passage of a legislation today that is bringing together two entities. But as parliamentarians, we must also evaluate the work and expectation that we have done, to look down the road and determine whether or not the legislation that we pass today, if the work is done, what success has been reaped. And so we must continue our own evaluation to ensure that the bills that we pass meets the target. May it please you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Gill and Senator Brown.
Thank you, President. If my former colleague, Senator Norman Washington Grant, was present, he would start by greetings to over 200,000 farmers and fisher folks that has fed the nation over time. And I start there because the impression is being given that this is new, brand new, bright future ahead. This is a continuation of what has been happening. Let's start with this Agro-Invest. Where is it located? It's located in the premises and Spanish Town Road of the Agricultural Marketing Corporation. And it has been carrying out some of the function of the AMC. So formalization don't mean originating. It means continuing and putting it under one legislation. It's not anything new. It's not anything that is so great and earth-shattering. So let's start there. And if we start there, Mr. President, let me just make one little correction of something that I think my colleague, Senator Bunting, made. He's quite correct in saying the brother of Fidel Castro visited his father's farm in the 70s, but it was Raul. Raul was the general of the army who contributed to the liberation of South Africa, Angola, Namibia. It was Ramon Castro, the agriculturalist, and I think Senator Bunting agrees that that was the Castro who came. It's the same one who brought some big animals up for King's house. I don't remember the name of the animal. But that be it. Mr. President, this debate takes place against the background of the PIOJ report on the economy for January to March. And agriculture is key to our development. When agriculture grows, the economy grows. That's just a well-established fact. When agriculture is down, whether you have an Agro-Invest corporation or an AMC, the economy is down. And the PIOJ reported that the economy from January to March quarter fell by 5.7%. I see the spin doctor saying the next quarter will have growth. But as Senator Gale said, we could get a hurricane. And so the high hopes of growth in the next quarter is subject to the vagaries of climate change. But I want to focus on the feeling. And I'm going to hear, oh, it's a pandemic. But nobody said the pandemic stopped the growth in the construction sector. You all claim it in the pandemic. So somebody needs to explain to me why we continue to have a decline in quarter over quarter, certainly the quarter relative to the year before, in agriculture of 2%. This is when we need to be looking to feed ourselves in the pandemic, not depending on which things will be allowed in and which pilot or captain of a ship will be allowed to travel to Jamaica. Agriculture becomes critical, yet in that quarter, we failed to grow. In fact, we had negative growth of 2%. But nobody in this debate talk about that. That's real. But we talk about the pie in the sky and the great hope for the future, which is important. But let's ground that in the reality that agriculture failed to grow in the last quarter and that it contributed to a 5.7% dip in GDP. I hope the projections are correct about improvement. And those improvements is from the way down St. Abraham, where we have been since the pandemic. Every little growth is important. My wife explained to me that the physiotherapist said, well, you can move your hand 1 millimeter more. I said, that's not what I want. I want to see it moving a foot more. And the physiotherapist said, well, one is important, tomorrow you add another one, and you get to the foot. So I'm looking forward to the growth in the economy. But let us recognize where we're coming from. We're not at the foot yet. We're still at a little millimeter, and in fact, sinking below the millimeter. So as we talk agriculture, Mr. President, let's just recognize that in the last quarter we failed to grow. We had negative growth of 2%. And the spin doctors out there don't want to talk about that. But that is why I hope that Agro-Invest cooperation can succeed. Because I want growth too. But let's admit that we have not had it. It's very important that we start with the truth about the state of things. Mr. President, speakers have spoken about glut. We saw our farmers in the breadbasket of St. Elizabeth complaining. There's a television shot of a farmer feeding tomato to the pigs. And Senator Crawford, the farmer said the pigs are complaining. Too much tomato. Tomato, you said tomato today. You know? But those tomatoes purchased as the clause in this, clause 8, 2B indicate, buy and sell agricultural produce, connects with the point that Senator Crawford made. We have to be willing to buy from the farmers and keep them in production and buy at a reasonable price. Cold storage. And it was good to make the initiative with trade winds to get juice. But we have to look to see how we can intervene so the farmers never lose. We must protect the farmers at all costs because their produce today is key to the nation's success, key to tackling the hunger in the nation, but also key to keeping them producing tomorrow and the day after, which is what we need. So I start with saying that this bill, properly activated, can assist. But we can easily have the bill and not activate it. And if we don't activate it, we're not going to get the success we need and the growth we want. Mr. President, I looked through the bill. And it says part of the function is to stimulate, facilitate, and undertake the development of agriculture in Jamaica. One of the biggest problems agriculture faces, Senator Sinclair, be it the Agro-21 out at Spring Plain, is pretty larceny. I don't see anything in this which says research or carry out a program to address predatory larceny. But predatory larceny is a big scourge on agricultural development. President, Senator Sinclair and his way here and Senator Allen, they drove past Rock in Trelawney, where Jason White, you're probably too young to know the story of the young man who went to sea with his father and was lost for a long time. From Rock Trelawney, you wouldn't know it. But a man started a non-traditional business down in Rock Trelawney, raising crabs. Saw the potential for export, good price, and Senator Campbell, the joy that Senator Campbell expressed, the other Senator, Rodriguez Campbell, he had that joy. And the newspaper took that joy and promulgated it. And then came the night. Then came the night president. The next morning, 95% of his crabs disappeared. And I don't think they disappeared like the night I was picking up crab coming from country and put them in the trunk of my car. And then wake up the next morning and them gone in all the crevices of the car and died there. You can imagine the car. But I don't think that's what happened to Jermaine Morris. It is what former Agriculture Minister Senator Gill, Roger Clark, described as a 2-foot puss. They came and they took away his crabs. Thankfully he's alive and he can go hunt and hopefully re-establish his business. And I see there's offer from company. No, there's an offer from a company to assist him with technology, security technology, to allow him to be alerted if the 2-foot puss come again. And I commend that young person in technology who saw the need to link technology with agriculture. But the pre-dialysis is something we have to address. And I have to call upon the rule of law. The rule of law to address it. And I raise the rule of law. No redemption. I raise the rule of law because a couple of days before, a farmer from Portland, Vivian Johnson, went over to St. Thomas to tend his cattle and goats. He lost his life because the criminals who came to steal his cattle were armed. And they took his life in the morning. This certainly doesn't encourage people to invest in agriculture. And I'm waiting for the rule of law to catch those people. I'm waiting for the rule of law to catch those crooks. Our farmers invest too much for it to disappear. My daughter-in-law yesterday said to me, I want to invest in goats. And I said to her, no. I was about to tell her, talk to Damien, and I said to her, you spend days, years, months cultivating your goats, and in a night, they disappear. Yeah. How do we protect such investors? How do we ensure that there is a protection for them so we allow them to get into the business and to earn money from the business? So in the name of Vivian Johnson, that St. Thomas farmer who was killed, in the name of Jermaine Morris, and in the name of Farmer Greg, that productive farmer from Portmore, who we saw on television promoting his success, he also was killed. And when I Googled this morning, Portland farmer, I saw so many stories of farmers being killed. Farmer who gets up at 4 o'clock, walk to his field, be it a yam field in Trelawney, be it cattle or vegetable in Manchester, St. Elizabeth, or in Clarendon, all over the country, they are losing out to the criminals. And so I hope that a piece of legislation being held by us, like this one, would say to us, pre-dialysis is something we're going to get. We're going to deal with it. And the rule of law will be so strengthened, Senator Samuda, that it will help the farmers. Like I see on television, a police officer said, well, we have a unit here and we're going to establish a unit there. For too long, this pre-dialysis thing have been going. We came with the, I think it is the former Minister of State or Minister in Agriculture, J.C. Hutchinson, and followed by Roger Clark. Came with a cattle passport. They have a chip. And that when you put the chip in the animal, you wouldn't be able to steal it. I wonder which country they were thinking of. We take milk out of coffee. We take milk out of coffee.
And chip out of cow.
And chip out of cow easily. So, what I find missing is the element of predatory. What I find missing in the debate is about the failure for us to grow agriculture in the way we need to do it. And yes, Senator Gale, the security of tenure of the workers are important. And so I have a case at the Ministry of Labour with this company since 2017. And the ministry has been sitting on it instead of sending it to the IDT. Because that worker is saying, I was unjustifiably dismissed. This fixed-term contract center and so was terminated. So, as a union man, I agree with you. We want to see workers treated fairly. But this company seems to be better at blocking the rights of the workers than growing the agriculture in the country. So the future of agriculture needs to be bright. But it's not today we're talking about a bright future in agriculture. I'd like to see and hear the measures that will make it bright. And let me just commend the government on one thing. I know Senator Norman Grant, as he then was, used to preach about life insurance for the farmers. And I commend the fact that this government has been able to implement it after all the work that was done. They ran the last leg, and they ran it well. So some farmers, some fisher folks are now insured. That's how the continuity of government must take place. And we appreciate that. But I'd like to see more being done in respect to the pre-dialysis, in respect to young people through the 4-H that has been a long-standing program from your days at school, Senator Gale, and before that, my days in school, the 4-H program. Taking oil pans, you know, the car oil just come in oil pan and we planting them. It's a long time we've been doing this, long time. We have not succeeded to the point we want. If agro-cooperation helps, glory be. If not, it will fail only because we are full of praise and not critical enough of the things that are not working. In this Senate, praise your government if you must, but also recognize the failings, the weakness, and I come back. Senator Samuel, that's your ministry. Pre-dialysis is the bane of our farmers. When you see them tell you they wake up, the cow's gone, the goat gone, them dig out the yam. You know, I wondered, after I saw the crab thing, I wonder if there are 2 products we could grow in Jamaica, which may save us. In Cuba, they have an alligator farm, where they use alligator for leather and other things. Maybe if we had an alligator farm, we'd find a way to thief them too. But maybe. But another thing the Cubans have done is to establish scorpion farms. Yes, scorpion farm, to use the venom of the scorpion for anti-cancer medicine. And when I saw that crab scene, and I said to myself, had the story been about raising scorpions with the tremendous price for the venom, whether the criminals would come for it? And I wake up saying, this is Jamaica. it's not a real place. Even if you grow scorpion, just like the crab, they'd come and thief it. Roger Clark was correct. The 2-foot post is too strong in the country. I'd like to see Agro-Invest and other agencies tackle the 2-foot post and put them away through the rule of law. May it please you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Longmore.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to make a small contribution to this bill, a very significant bill. Short, brief. No, definitely not. Considering my beginnings, Mr. President, I could not allow myself to sit and not comment on how significant this piece of legislation is and how hopefully it can impact the progress of our country. I have said before that I grew up on a farm, but the extent of farming in me is from both sides of my family. My grandfather was a manager of a huge estate back in St. Elizabeth, and my mother's family was Caribbean, it was contract chicken farmers from as far as I can remember. But this has put me where I am right now. And I have, from those beginnings, been all over this world, and I am grateful for where I have started from. And in that same capacity, I'm able to recognize and appreciate the potential for Jamaica in terms of our agricultural produce and what it means to the international market. And so with this piece of legislation, there is great hope, as is illustrated in Clause 7, as to what could potentially come from it. Now, one of the other great concerns, and I'm hoping that will be addressed, a couple of them have been highlighted by previous speakers, but this hopefully will seek to cohesively bring farming and farmers who are so very vulnerable because of their usual humble beginnings and settings into a more formalized operation that is not just the fulfillment that they get from the act of farming, but is financially viable and feasible as an option for progressing to one's life goals and life dreams. Mr. President, you know, I am forever the optimist. My glass is always half full. And Senator Brown gave us a fulsome recognition of, you know, the negatives. I am going to try and focus on the positives. I practice positive psychiatry, and that's where I am at right now. And boy, I don't know if I've considered such. But, Mr. President, I have, in terms of the potential of Jamaica, and I'll just put it simply this way, and Senator Crawford, I think you will understand where I'm coming from with this. We import so much. So many containers come in full. I challenge our business and the persons in the industry that every single container that comes into Jamaica full, that is a trade route that we can fill going back. Every single market that we buy from already, we can sell to. There must be something here that they want. This is brand Jamaica, and brand Jamaica sells. And I remember one of the times I was in a foreign place, I won't say where, and there was a health food store. And one of the things that was a new product, and it was dehydrated mangoes. And when I taste the mango, absolutely nothing compared. A little pack of this thing, maybe about 5 ounces, was like 12 euros. Yeah? And I thought about it. I said, can you imagine if we dehydrated and exported our sugar loaf pineapple? That you don't even have to add sugar to for it to be a candied sweet. The same thing with our Julie mango. The same thing with our Neesberry or star apple. There's a company, a local company now that I must congratulate in terms of the quality of the product. Caribbean Select ice cream, where they're making the ice cream from coconut milk. This thing is so very good. And if we can fill those containers that are coming in, every single full container can go back out with something. We have established trade routes already. All we have to do is reverse them. It is hugely, hugely, hugely mind-boggling what the potential could be for that. Mr. President, farming is security. And when I say farming is security, I mean that farming, as COVID-19 has shown us, our food security is paramount. The vulnerability of our local existence to natural disasters and to the potential for interruption of our food supply is one that we cannot continue to keep at risk. And so we must have the incentive to secure our own foods, and in doing so, encouraging the use of healthy foods. A little insight in terms of the health benefits of some of the natural products that we have here. A significant amount of the neurodevelopmental disorders that children suffer from, autism, ADHD, Asperger's, a lot of the exacerbating factors that result in those illnesses is actually what the child is eating. There is significant sensitivity to gluten and dairy that persons don't realize. And a lot of these children, if they go on a gluten-free, natural carbohydrate diet, like our yams or green bananas or dasheen, there is significant improvement. In my practice, I have had patients who came to me on 3 different antipsychotic medications, and through a change in their diet and use of natural produce that we have here, I have had the persons reduced, 8-year-old, reduced to less than half of one of what they had before. So there's significant health benefits if we are to channel proper food security, and also with the benefit of adding immune boosting agents to it. The other security that agriculture can add to is water security. Mr. President, I think we're all very aware of climate change and the risk of water shortages that we may be seeing in the future. As we plant more, we encourage more rainfall. And so I'm hoping that that is a significant consideration in some of the crops that we pursue, in some of the interventions that we can have and put now to prevent what could be significant disaster later on. And as I say that, of course, I have to mention about bamboo and the potential to save landslides. And those are very significant initiatives that could seek to protect our environment. Financial security speaks for itself. But not just to say overall increasing in GDP. Senator Gale spoke of the youth and the involvement of the youth in agriculture. a significant avenue for upliftment of one of our very vulnerable population group is agriculture. In terms of women in farming, it is amazing the unrecognized effect of financial abuse that women go through. And I can speak specifically to this with respect to women who have elevated themselves out of financial suffrage based on their involvement in agriculture. And that, just as Senator Gale mentioned around initiatives to encourage youth and possibly incentives to get youth involved in agriculture, I hope that we will have similar incentives for women in terms of agriculture. Mr. President, Senator Brown emphasized around precedent larceny, and I have it written down here about Mr. Morris in Rockin, Trelawney. My heart broke. I remember when I saw the first article around the crab farming, and I said, this is a guy who is thinking. And I was like, this is something that could so grow. Everybody loves crab, and this man has found a way to really tap into something that could be tremendously potential, has tremendous potential. And then you see, I was heartbroken when I saw it. And I was just like, why? I mean, come on, the man is really trying his best here. But I give courage to Mr. Morris, because usually when one door closes, about 10 more open, and they tend to be much better. So I send very significant positive energy towards him, and I'm hoping that it is a lesson that he learns from this that will make him even more successful later on. But Mr. President, why I focus, and I was going to focus on clause on predial larceny, with respect to clause 7.3, D, E, and F, where you have laid out as functions and roles of the corporation, that there be initiative providing financial assistance as appropriate to organization for the establishment, carrying on, and expansion of agricultural development enterprises, to enter into arrangements with any government, non-government organization, corporation, company, multilateral organization, or person that has functions related to the development of agriculture. And F, do all such other things as corporation considers necessary or expedient for the purpose of carrying out its function. I too hope that predial larceny would be one such that we have significant focus on intervention on. Now, recognize, Senator Brown, that the government is taking predial larceny very seriously, as we have seen amendments to the Criminal Justice Act, where in clause 11, pardon? The Criminal Justice Act, Suppression of Criminal Organization Act, aka the anti-gang legislation. And we have amendments there to include offenses under the Fisheries Act and the Larceny Act for simple larceny and larceny of cattle. So the government does recognize and is taking action to enforce significant effect against such thievery of hard labor. But Mr. President, you know, and I relate to this. I remember when one of the few times I saw my father's eyes well up in tears. We had a Nubian goat, and I know you know what it means, the Nubian and a Taggenberg. I know it. I know the farming. I know the farming. And this Nubian goat was probably the back, beautiful animal. The back of the animal was probably to about this size. And Daddy had him in a special pen where he had him thing. And one morning Daddy woke up and the goat was gone. And he walked the property, and he saw where the wire was cut, and just about 2 feet outside of that wire, he saw the blood. Yeah? it cuts at the core of the person who has tended to this animal. For me, predial larceny is one of the most wicked acts that happens in Jamaica. All right? No, but I am speaking because we have acted against it. We are putting in the legislative change to do something about it. So it is not just being negative. It is being realistic and recognizing also that the government is acting to correct something that has been existing for a long time. And I remember that some did oppose it. So yes, Mr. President, at the end of the day, there are many benefits to this bill. There is one other area under Clause 7D that I would like to just bring another point of another perspective. 7D, where carrying out an expansion of agricultural development enterprise. A significant role for farming and an almost new industry that could be significantly helpful in a Jamaican society is therapeutic farming. It has been established that it is significantly beneficial for persons who are at risk, who are dealing with particular illnesses such as depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and anxiety issues, that therapeutic farming could be tremendously effective, even to the level as medications. And so I encourage and I hope that some of the lateral thinking on the outside of the box, will include these interventions for especially our at-risk youth and for persons who are significantly in need of this type of rehabilitation. So it is significantly beneficial across the board, from, as I mentioned, food security, financial security, and, of course, therapeutic farming. I also have to recognize the great benefit that this bill could have in terms of the organizing and the upliftment of rural Jamaica especially, where so many of our economic burdens are there because there isn't the conjunctive economic development. And so with that, Mr. President, I recognize agriculture as our unearthed savior, and I think that that is where significant investment should be, and I think that that is one of the most secure ways for us to see to the development of our country. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you very much. Minister Campbell, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Whilst I welcome the debate which has gone on for a while, I thought that it was a general debate on the state of agriculture. And given where we are, I think I'll address the issues which are central to the legislation, the piece of legislation before us. There are some recurring themes which, if picked up, and let me deal with the one which arose perhaps most latterly in relation to predial larceny. And I think it started with Senator Brown. It's the fact that predial larceny is not addressed in the bill, as this bill is not the appropriate legislation to address that issue. We recognize that predial larceny is a scourge. However, the ministry already is taking steps to have the Cabinet approve the relevant amendments to the existing Predial Larceny Prevention Act, as well as the Agricultural Produce Act, to strengthen and include relevant provisions such as increasing the low fines to to deter predial thieves. The ministry will be seeking to revamp the agricultural wardens, for which the existing Predial Larceny Prevention Act addresses that issue. But there is, in fact, at the risk of offending anyone, there's an issue which we're failing to address. And that's the fact that we have been putting a tremendous burden on the people we call small farmers. And I sincerely hope I don't commit any sins by saying that farming in Jamaica will never be successful if all we have are people operating on 1 acre plots. On 1 acre plots. We have to, and I think that this may very well, the piece of legislation we have may very well help us to address those issues. We have to find a way. Agriculture has to be mechanized. For it to be successful, if we really want to go into crop production, we have to find ways of making and using water, things like water. We have to use them more efficiently. We have to get the financing. For years we have hidden away the institutions that we have put in place have sought to get from small farmers security for the few $100s that they may get to borrow. We have to now get to the point where we, and I must commend the government for doing this, they're amended the several pieces of legislation to make it more, the grant of titles come about more effectively, in a more efficient way. I noticed that the land adjudication committees they're meeting all over the islands. I think they started in southern Jamaica. And certainly as we go along, that it will improve the land tenure of a lot of these persons, and they can then use their titles for securing loans from the institutions. I noticed that Senator Bunting raised the issue of the funding, Senator Bunting, he spoke about the mechanisms and the pool of funds and how they'd be handled. Well, let me just say that this piece of legislation is just really seeking to set up the framework, and there are no funds yet allocated to that fund. And once we go on, once all this is formalized, then the mechanisms will be put in place to formalize the relationship with the existing lending institutions, to include the PC banks. In relation to as I mentioned before, the size of the pool of funds, this pool is not yet funded, and the mechanisms will have to be developed to build out this fund. All right, but what I Caribbean does, I've made some notes of. Very well. We have what the bill seeks to do is to formalize the relationship between Agro-Investment Corporation and Agricultural Marketing Corporation, and to amend and then to strengthen the whole framework. That, I think, is what the government in several areas has done, and it may appear to be piecemeal, but if you look at what the Ministry of Agriculture is doing in bringing these young people and directing them. In fact, anecdotally, I know of one entity which has had a significant pool of funds, and in the last 10 years, it has not had one application for funding from that entity. It doesn't, and so in a real way, this is what I think Minister Green is focusing on. He's attempting to get all these young persons to access these entities, these organizations, and then will have the governmental support behind them. As I said earlier, the framework is not yet in place, but that is what he seeks to do. So I commend the bill and what it seeks to do, and ask that the bill be read a second time.
Members would have heard the question. All in favor? Against?
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Agro-Investment Corporation Act to entrust the functions of the Agricultural Marketing Corporation to the Agro-Investment Corporation, to repeal the Agricultural Marketing Corporation Act, and to provide for connected matters. Read a second time.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The Senate will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole Senate to consider the bill clause by clause when the Marshal arrives. In the meantime, I'll just do the 120 motion. It being 120, Madam Leader? It's 120 probably in Hanover.
Mr. President, might I ask that the Senate be allowed to sit beyond 1:30 to complete the business of the day?
Members would have heard the question. Those in favor? Against? Ayes have it. The Senate will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole Senate to consider the bill clause by clause. Thank you very much. With your membership's permission, I'll put clauses 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Those in favor? Against? The ayes have it. I put clauses 6, 7, 8, and 9. Those in favor? Against? The ayes have it. I put clauses 10, 11, 12, and 13. Those in favor? Against? The ayes have it. I put the title and enacting clause. Those in favor? Against? The ayes have it. The question is that I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendment. Those in favor? Against? The ayes have it. I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendment. Minister? Thank you, Minister. The question is that the bill be read for a third time. Those in favor? Yes. Against?
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Agro-Investment Corporation Act to entrust the functions of the Agricultural Marketing Corporation to the Agro-Investment Corporation, to repeal the Agricultural Marketing Corporation Act, and to provide for connected matters, read a third time and passed.
Thank you very much, Leader.
Mr. President, might I ask for recommittal of notices of motion given orally?
The question would have been asked and heard. Those in favor? Against?
Mr. President, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the Senate I will move, be it resolved with reference to the resolution approved by this Honorable Senate on the 15th day of January 2021, appointing a select committee to sit jointly with a similar committee appointed by the House of Representatives to consider and report on a bill shortly entitled the Customs Act 2020, that the name Sophia Fraser-Binns be deleted and the name Janice Allen substituted therefore. Mr. President, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today I will move for the suspension of standing orders to enable me to take this motion.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President, I now move for the suspension of standing orders to allow me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
Thank you very much. Members heard? Approved? Thank you.
Mr. President, I ask that the motion now be approved.
Members would have heard the motion so ably put forward by the Minister. Those in favor? Against? Minister?
Mr. President, it is not intended to do any further business today, but I understand that you have given leave for a matter to be raised.
Thank you very much. Senator Fraser-Binns.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, today is World Environment Day. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I make my contribution as we recognize National Environmental Awareness Week 2021. National Environmental Awareness Week is being celebrated June 1 to 8, 2021 under the theme Ecosystem Restoration. And in doing so, we commence the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration that goes from 2021 to 2030, which also coincides with the deadline for the Sustainable Development Goals. Mr. President, according to scientists, this decade represents the absolute last chance to avoid the catastrophic climate change effects. During this decade, we are tasked with the challenge of preventing, slowing, and reversing ecosystem degradation across our lands and waterways. There has never been a more pressing need to restore our degraded ecosystem than today. All life depends on ecosystem, and our island home Jamaica is no different. Our country and our people will be healthier and safer if our ecosystems are healthy. Mr. President, the decades of destruction of natural resources, such as our forest, our cockpit country, our oceans, have become a systemic risk to our local economy, our environment, as well as the life and livelihood of our people. The actions of successive governments have not always shown a real commitment to protecting the environment. And regrettably, our coast, wetlands, flora, and fauna continue to be destroyed for economic or personal gain. We sometimes do not know the value of what we have lost in our environment because of the absence of appropriate environmental cost-benefit analysis. And so, Mr. President, as we mark Environmental Awareness Week 2021, and in the face of the existential threat to the environment, ecosystem conservation, management, and restoration must be critical components of our local response and recovery. We have long passed the stage of protection. We are now at the stage of restoration. We must accept that real forest restoration investment can help in the creation of millions of green employment, improved human health, and increased food security. We in the opposition stands ready to work with the government and all private entities to implement, to undertake all proactive and practical actions to restore our environment. We must go beyond replanting of trees, which, though critical, is not sufficient to restore the environment. Mr. President, as we mark World Environment Week, and today in particular, Environmental Day, we have some recommendations that we'd like to share. One is the incorporation of the consideration of the impacts of climate change in all land use planning and approvals for developments. There has to be the continuous replanting of trees to attain reforestation. there must be the including mangroves, yes. There must be the incorporation of specific procedures for conducting environmental impact assessments in appropriate legislation. We need a more robust use of the provisions of the Mining Act to delineate no mining areas in all ecologically sensitive areas in Jamaica with appropriate sanctions for breaches, and the government to undertake a geospatial planning of our oceans. And Senator Samuda will tell you about how our fish life is being impacted by climate change. Mr. President, the investment in nature-based solutions as a key component of transformational change and acceptance of the climate change crisis will improve our lives, our communities, and organization, and indeed protect our environment. Let us use the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration as a rallying cry for ecosystem protection and restoration for the benefit of our people and our environment. We can only improve people's livelihood, combat climate change, and halt biodiversity loss if ecosystems are healthy. Mr. President, we have an opportunity to reverse the trend of deforestation, rescue and restore our forests, and implement policies and practices that will safeguard them. On this Environmental Day, during this Environmental Week, and during this decade of environmental protection and restoration, let us all commit to restore our ecosystem for today and tomorrow's generation, and indeed for our own survival. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Fraser-Binns, for bringing this important day of recognition to our attention. Senator Samuda.
Mr. President, I too wish to extend my thanks to Senator Fraser-Binns for raising this extremely important issue. It's no secret, I certainly think, from the members who have known me from 2016, that this is an area of great interest and passion of mine. Admittedly, Senator Fraser-Binns, I was a little nervous when you said it was non-controversial based on the color of the dress this morning. But I was pleasantly surprised. But no, I have worked with Senator Fraser-Binns, and persons don't know this, and sometimes, you know, in the back and forth of political debates, even as we look back to the work that would have started in this Senate by way of measures taken on some single-use plastic packaging, persons wouldn't know that Senator Fraser-Binns served with me on the working group that we opted not to be chaired by a politically associated person to ensure that the recommendations made were not necessarily devoid of political sensitivities, but certainly could be accepted by all. And so I've worked with Senator Fraser-Binns, so I know her passion and focus in this area. This is a particularly important week, and I don't think it receives globally the attention that it should. And I know with the difficulties associated with COVID-19, many of the public education efforts that usually take place, led by many of our agencies, especially even within our schools, have not been able to take place, and that is truly sad. It's one of the bigger impacts, I think, of COVID-19 from my own personal perspective. The derailing of the environmental and climate change focus of our global leadership, I think, is unfortunate. But the theme, as mentioned by Senator Fraser-Binns, is particularly important because, colleagues, this is indeed the challenge of our lifetime. When the story is told, it won't be COVID-19. And that is not to diminish the challenge, the awesome challenge that is for all of us. But though this is a slower moving disaster, it is indeed a disaster that we must contain, reverse, and take steps to ensure we're in a better space. Mr. President, I believe World Environment Day is actually tomorrow. It's the 5th or 4th? Tomorrow. Being celebrated today, and World Oceans Day is actually June 8th. So it is a period of great acknowledgement and in some cases celebration of strides made, and I think period where public education must set in to acknowledge the immense challenges that we face. It is one of the reasons why I'm particularly proud of some of the steps and things that we've achieved since 2016, President, and also urge us to move significantly further and faster in our protection of this space. I know when I was first appointed to the Senate, and you're going through that initial phase, as with any change of administration where you have the appointments of a cabinet, then you appointment of senators, then you start to hear boards, and you start to hear agency assignments and things that happen naturally with the change of administrations, and it's just part of our political process. I remember I was a little uncomfortable, and I said it here at the time, with the lack of naming of a Ministry of Environment at the time. But my discomfort quickly subsided with the agenda and the program of work that we undertook, because we didn't just, it wasn't going to be sufficient for me personally, and I think persons know where I stand on environmental issues. I wouldn't have been comfortable either if there was a Ministry of Environment that wasn't performing. So my comfort increased significantly when I saw how we approached the work that was before us. When I saw the decisions taken to a bold set of decisions as it related to 2 potential investments that were, would have been groundbreaking economically, but would have been earth-shattering environmentally. One recalls discussions around Goat Islands and the discussions around the potential coal plant in St. Elizabeth. To not take those was an extremely brave, strong showing, and it showed political maturity, and I was proud of it. The series of other steps and actions that were taken, sometimes when I read the list and you're tempted to believe that all, you've done these things, so all is well, is still a far way off of what is required. There's a lot of work to be done. We consider, and I was just writing down from memory what I know we'd done, and I even looked at my 2019 State of the Nation contribution, and I was just remembering what we'd gone through. And just to remind colleagues, and I will end each section by saying, good steps, way more needed, right? Because that's the facts. We've made some strides, but way more is needed if we're to mitigate and adapt for what is before us. We would have done significant upgrades to 3 wastewater treatment plants in the last 4 years. There was significant investment in rainwater harvesting and storage. One of the things that we don't sometimes put enough emphasis in, and I'm particularly happy that we don't put enough emphasis in scientific analysis and research. So investment through the Metafis in things like the Doppler radar is particularly important as we understand our changing weather patterns if we're to truly plan. When I think of, the broad topic, and we use climate change and the climate change discussion interchangeably for everything under the sun these days, that gives us a challenge. But when I think of where we're positioned based on the actions we've taken as a global leader in the climate change movement, I'm particularly proud. When I think of the fact that it has been recognized when the UN Secretary General invited Prime Minister Holness to serve with President Macron, was it Trudeau as well? No, just President Macron and the Emir of Qatar, to lead the charge in the replenishment of the Global Climate Fund, which for small island developing states is immensely important that fund is in place. It gave me a sense of pride because our work was being acknowledged. When we were invited to join by PM Solberg, the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy, with one of 13 states, 14 global leaders, because on that group there's also Peter Thompson, the UN Special Envoy for Ocean. So it's 13 world leaders, and Peter Thompson as a global leader. So, and that panel's work is something the country should be proud of. I mean, it's not a sexy topic or one of those that's going to lead front page after front page, but it's certainly immensely important work. But it recognized that the decisions that I'll just remind us that we'd made were not just important, but were being recognized locally and globally. You mentioned the need to replenish. It's absolutely impatient of debate, many of which fruit trees were also well underway, not just at the assessment stage, but in the implementation stage of repairing areas or restoring areas, significant hectares of damaged mangrove forests. We're also, and something that we don't speak about very often, and I'll share some notes because it didn't even come to me government circle-wise, Senator Binns. We're looking significantly in many of our nearshore areas at the replenishment and restoration of our seagrass. And there's a program that I didn't even realize was, so even when, sometimes many things happening around, you don't necessarily see everything, but that one gives me a lot of hope because it is one of the best carbon capture mechanisms that nature gives us. And it's, I've seen it on paper. I'm actually very curious and excited to go and see if it works because it gives us, it moves us closer to our net zero and our 2030 and 2050 targets if we replenish our seagrass. But I mentioned the 3 million trees. I mentioned our work, and I say our work because it was passed by many members who would have sat in the Senate. And again, I thank members on both sides who would have contributed to that exercise. The ban on single-use plastic packaging by specifically straws, expanded polystyrene foam, and indeed single-use plastic bags below 24 that aren't primary food packaging. I look at the legislative and policy work that we've done. And this takes me to the actions that we need to take after, which we look at the work that's been done on the Endangered Species Act, the work that is ongoing now on the Forest Act that will come, even though I think we completed the policy 2019, if I'm around that time. I look at the work that was done, and I saw comments from previous admin, and I give credit certainly where I'm aware of it, the work on the National